Thank you for watching ECSO News, where facts matter. I'm Allison Morgan.
And I'm Amber Southard. We need your help identifying this man. On December 22nd, an individual was shot at College Trace Apartments. The man in the video might be involved in this incident. If you have any information about this shooting, contact Crime Stoppers at 433-STOP or the ECSO at 436-9620.
A cross-country crime spree has ended thanks to the good work of Escambia County Sheriff's Office investigators. The two criminals from California made the wrong move by stopping and committing crimes in Escambia County. Now they're behind bars after ECSO investigators tracked them to Jacksonville, Florida. I sat down with investigator Christy Berry with details on the investigation and an important reminder for Escambia County residents. Daniel Asano and Gwen Brown got into their car in California and drove east, first stopping in Oklahoma, then Pensacola, on their way to a family member's home in South Florida, when their pit stop turned into the start of a big investigation for investigator Berry. Between January 19th and 25th, they broke into 6 vehicles on Fort Pickens Road and Areola Drive.
They got to Pensacola and they committed some vehicle burglaries on Pensacola Beach, numerous vehicle burglaries on Pensacola Beach. During one of the vehicle burglaries, a female's wallet was located. Inside of her wallet was her ID, numerous credit cards, and some cash. Enough cash to buy them a hotel room on the beach for a few days.
That wallet gave the suspects just what they needed to continue their crime spree, opening a bank account, cashing stolen checks in the victim's name.
They basically completely stole this woman's identity and ran with it because her car doors were unlocked and she had her wallet, ID, and credit cards in her vehicle.
After the burglaries on the beach, they headed east, but not before committing numerous crimes in the city. According to the Pensacola Police Department, they went to at least 2 ATMs, pouring glue in them after trying to use the stolen debit and credit cards. Then they headed into Santa Rosa County, pawning items they had stolen from cars in Escambia County.
They pawned items down the East Coast. They pawned items in Georgia, Jacksonville, Callaway, Florida, Lynn Haven, Florida, in our female victim's name.
They also rented a vehicle in the victim's name, which tipped investigator Berry off to their whereabouts.
The rental car company reported the vehicle as stolen in Santa Rosa County. Through numerous resources, we were able to locate the vehicle at a Motel 6 in Jacksonville, Florida, and we contacted Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and had them respond to the Motel 6. Speaking with the Jacksonville officer, he advised that a tall, bald, white male with large amount of tattoos had just exited the hotel room that had been registered in our victim's name. He matched that individual matched the description of our male suspect. The Jacksonville officer asked me to hold on, put the phone in his pocket while I listened, and went to detain the individual. I could hear the Jacksonville officer running to catch the suspect, and a short time later he came back on the phone and advised that he had the suspect, who was positively identified as my suspect, detained.
But they still needed to arrest his accomplice, Gwen Brown.
They were going to attempt to make contact with the female in the hotel room. They made contact with her in the hotel room and she presented my victim's ID as her own. He questioned her about it and she said, yeah, that's me. And he called her on it, and then she came out and said, no, it wasn't her, and they detained her. They immediately recovered the stolen firearm that was stolen from Walton County, and they called me back and said, hey, we got them both and we got the gun.
Over 200 items of evidence, including credit cards, IDs, and wigs Brown used to assume the identity of her victim, were recovered by investigators Christy Berry and Jessica Wood. Deputy Berry wants this to serve as a reminder to always lock your doors.
It only took them a week to burglarize our victim's vehicle, open a bank account in her name, rent a vehicle in her name, pawn numerous items in her name, cash multiple stolen checks in her name. Basically completely assume her identity and mess her up with both credit and to where she could possibly be facing criminal charges.
They face multiple vehicle burglary charges, grand theft, fraudulent use of credit cards, identity theft, and uttering a forged document, among other charges.
Do you know where Jessica Hawkins is? She's wanted for questioning only in a homicide case. The homicide happened on January 27th on Warner Avenue. If you have any information on Hawkins' whereabouts, contact Crime Stoppers at 433-STOP. And don't think we forgot about you, Stacy Purcell. Stacy's our Lucky Wheel of Fugitives winner. Allison, tell Stacy what she's won.
Well, Amber, Stacy has won a lovely pair of matching silver bracelets. We would love to give you your prize, Stacy, so come on down to 1700 West Leonard Street. Our men and women in green are waiting for you.
It was a competition of accuracy and agility last week. The United States Police Canine Association Region 1 field trials were held in Gulf Breeze. Our canines and their handlers were asked to compete in several courses, showing off their skills. Congratulations to Master Deputy Goldsby and Canine Caleb, and Deputy Reeves with Canine Alec, tied for third in agility. Deputy Brown with Canine Django received 5th overall in agility. Lieutenant Potts and Canine Onyx were awarded 5th in obedience. Deputy Cassidy with Canine Kaiser and Deputy Reeves with Canine Alec received 3rd in two-man team. Deputy Collier and Canine Barrow were awarded 12th overall. Deputy Rogers with Canine Axel received 14th overall.
Take a look at Deputy Shelley. He's demonstrating our impairment goggles to a driver's ed class at Escambia High School. The goggles will allow the person wearing them to experience what it's like to drive drunk. The demonstration is done to promote safe driving. Would your high school or organization like a goggle and pedal cart demonstration? Call the DUI unit at 436-9620.
And no one knows how to do Mardi Gras quite like Pensacola. Check out these pictures of our mounted posse and ECSO deputies throwing beads at the Pensacola Mardi Gras parade. We had a blast throwing beads to the thousands of people who attended the parade. And ECSO school resource officers also visited Montclair Elementary School to walk in their annual Mardi Gras parade this year.
We want to help you feel safer in your neighborhood and home. Sign up for the Neighborhood Watch Academy. It's a one-night class that offers valuable insight on crime prevention, whether you want to start a neighborhood watch or just be prepared. The class will be from 5 to 9 p.m. on March 21st at the Sheriff's Office Administration Building located at 1700 West Leonard Street. Sign up for it at escambiaso.com.
Sheriff David Morgan and Chief Chip Simmons, along with Engine 2 and Engine 114, showed their support with the Beulah Community Center at Kayla Crocker's memorial event. Kayla was murdered in Escambia County last month at the hands of William Billy Boyette and his accomplice, Mary Rice. The two fled to Georgia, where Rice surrendered to law enforcement and Boyette killed himself. The funds raised at the event went to an account at Navy Federal Credit Union in her children's names. We need your help locating the people in this week's Missing Persons segment. The first juvenile we are highlighting is 16-year-old Javon Michael Rawls. Rawls is also wanted for violation of probation. Rawls has been missing since February 8th. We are also looking for 15-year-old Devon Kiana Stanberry. Stanberry has been missing since February 8th. If you have any information on these missing people, contact the ECSO at 436-9620.
I'm Escambia County Sheriff David Morgan, and thank you for watching Ask the Sheriff. This is your chance to ask me any questions you want answered about the ECSO. Our team hits the streets again, and here are some of the questions you asked.
Is there a term limit for being sheriff, and if not, should there be one?
Catherine asked, is there a term limit for the office of sheriff? No, Catherine, there is not. Several years ago within the state of Florida, term limits were placed at the state level on the governor and the Senate and the House. Up until that time, they also had no term limits. This went all the way through the court system to include the federal court system. There were some moves afoot at one time to limit congressmen and senators at the federal level, just like the president, as you well know, is now limited to 2 terms. It does not apply to local offices, meaning in the city or counties within the state of Florida. They were not brought into that. Now, oddly enough, it does apply to offices in 2 counties in Florida. I'm trying my best to confuse you here, young lady. And that is down in Miami-Dade, which is a consolidated county, as is Duval County and Jacksonville. term limits do apply to those two counties. They operate under what's called a consolidated government, meaning the city and the county governments are together. Most people will tell you that term limits should be determined by the citizens, meaning that if the citizens want to continue to return any elected official to office and they meet the physical requirements and mental and emotional requirements to serve, most voters would tell you that they think it's their right to choose the candidates of their choice.
And I wanted to know, can you be a deputy with a criminal record, and what's allowed for you to be a deputy if you have a criminal record?
I never asked the question, can you have a criminal record and be a deputy or a member of law enforcement? The short answer, Taylor, is no. We have very stringent requirements, of course, to be admitted into law enforcement. And one of those things, as you can well imagine, is that if you're expected to be a keeper or enforcer of the law, the rules begin with you. We have very high expectations for law enforcement officers, and our men and women are judged by a much higher standard than the normal civilian populace. And so therefore, if you have a criminal record, you're excluded from being a member of law enforcement.
Do you think that criminals have better guns than the deputies?
Jonah asked the question, do we think criminals have better guns than deputies? Jonah, they may not be better guns. By that I mean the make of the weapon. It may be an off-brand, if you will. It wouldn't necessarily be a Colt or a Smith or a Kimber or some of the higher-end guns. But they certainly can, without any restriction, change guns, meaning that if they want to procure illegally an automatic firing weapon, or they can carry multiple weapons on them, they're not restricted by any calibers or the type of rounds that they use, meaning they can also use frangible rounds, which are basically a type of buckshot that causes a tremendous amount of damage when fired into the human body. And that's really as I tell folks, we play by a very specific rule book in law enforcement. We can only carry certain guns, certain manufacturers, certain rounds that we can carry. And again, if our officers carry a weapon, they have to be fully qualified with that weapon. The criminal element that we're dealing with doesn't have a rule book. And so if tonight they want to go out and get a sawed-off 12-gauge shotgun, which is clearly illegal, and go out and commit a robbery and God forbid, shoot one of our citizens here, they don't have any restrictions. They can do as they please until they're caught by law enforcement. So again, are they better armed? Then I guess you could probably make the argument that they are because they don't follow any rules and the law means nothing to them. Judy asked, have we ever considered doing a teen driving course like other counties do? Actually, Judy, we have considered that, and we have in fact done that. One year we partnered with the Sports Car Clubs of America, which gave our students an opportunity to actually drive some Corvettes, which they thought was pretty neat, especially for teenagers. But we put on what's called the Teen Driving Challenge. We have to get a certain number of willing participants, if you will, to sign up for it, to make it worth our while to sponsor it. And also the Sports Car Club of America, again, I'm sure would partner with us again. So if you have an interest in that, please give us a call at the sheriff's office, or contact a deputy, or call my office at 436-9512. That's 436-9512. And speak to Anita. Again, identify yourself and that you would be interested in finding out about the Teen Challenge driving course. And we'd be more than happy to put on another one, again, for your school or for any group that you might have to get together.
And how do you guys find the issues in the neighborhoods?
I want to ask, how do we find out what specific issues are currently on the front burner in our neighborhoods? We do this by many means, Jonah. We have neighborhood watches, neighborhood associations. You may have heard me speak on other programs that we went from 13 neighborhood watches to over 150 neighborhood watches in Escambia County. So we're very actively engaged in our community. Community outreach has been something that I started way back, long before I was sheriff, back in 2006. Walking neighborhoods, speaking to people, again, finding out what their issues were. What's most critical to them. And it runs the entire gamut, by the way. Some neighborhoods have problems with speeding. So they talk to you about getting the county involved with roads and bridges and getting speed bumps possibly put in. Or it could be, a new neighbor's moved in and they play loud music, or they have barking dogs, or we suspect drug activity in a particular house. So in order to find out specifically what issues are in a neighborhood, you must obviously go out there and find out what that is. And you do that through citizen personal contact. Again, getting out of your car, walking a neighborhood, or attending these meetings throughout the county, which I attend a tremendous number. So we stay fairly well plugged in with our community, and I think we're very responsive.
And have you ever been shot or shot someone?
Shaylee's question is, have I ever been shot or have I shot anyone? Well, thankfully, Shaylee, the answer to that question is no. And the vast majority of law enforcement officers throughout the United States will go their entire career without ever even drawing their service weapon. So while we all have a movie or television version of law enforcement officers and how they respond, reality is a lot less exciting than television and the movies, and thank goodness for that. Unfortunately, in Escambia County, we've had a high history of high crime rates, high rates of incarceration, and that has traditionally been so in Escambia County since records were kept. Escambia County has always been in the top 10 throughout the state of Florida for, again, the amount of crimes and the rate of incarceration. So we're working very hard and very diligently to bring those numbers down. This last year, after 7 very difficult years and trying new programs and engaging our community in law enforcement, we're starting to see a significant downward trend in things like violent crime, meaning things that involve guns. And we have a wonderful partnership with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms folks, which is a federal agency. Special Agent Beach heads that unit up here. Wonderful working relationship with them. Again, community bonding, getting our community engaged with, reporting crimes and assisting us, not just in getting leads, but many times, coming forth with information. So we're seeing that downward trend in violent crime. Also to include, I'd throw domestic violence in there. We saw some dramatic reductions in domestic violence. While it was trending up throughout the state of Florida, we saw an over 20% drop in our domestic crimes in Escambia County. So these programs that we started years ago are now finally starting, to bear some fruit. As they say, this problem did not, spring up overnight, nor will these problems be solved overnight. But we're seeing, again, a very encouraging trend, and it's because of the citizens of Escambia County engaging with law enforcement. So we, intend to continue these strong community outreach programs and see those trends come down.
Besides standard guns, is there any type of preference you have when having to go into some kind of field, or mainly having to do the job itself?
Miguel asked the question on firearms and preferences for firearms, and I'm not sure, Miguel, if you meant for me personally or for the average citizen. So let me kind of step through that. Firearms and their usage is a very individual thing for citizens as opposed to law enforcement, meaning that we have standard issue weapons here, standard issue rounds that our officers carry, and of course that is regulated by their training, which is through the academy, and then of course reinforced once they become a deputy with the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. And the weapons do vary between those officers that are on the street, those that work in investigations, and then those who are also with our tactical teams in SWAT, having to do with the calibers that they carry, also the long guns that they carry, which are rifles and of course shotguns I would also include in that. If you're asking about preferences for myself or for an individual, I will tell you that if you're new to firearms, we encourage you to go and take firearm safety classes. There are several local ranges, some indoor ranges and some outdoor ranges that teach National Rifle Association certified courses, especially if you're going for a concealed carry license. Then of course you have to complete the course to get your certification to be sent to the state for your license. But I guess a basic rule of thumb for recommendation, would be if you're not familiar with firearms, a smaller caliber weapon, and this is talking about for your own personal defense, and also something that is doesn't require a lot of maintenance, and in that I would include revolvers. Most people that aren't familiar with firearms, we refer to them as automatics, which they're really not. The guns that we carry are actually semi-automatic weapons. The only true automatic weapon are those that fire every round that they have when you pull the trigger. Now that's an automatic weapon, and those primarily are restricted to the military and law enforcement. If you're a collector, you can get those, but it's a pretty rigorous background check that you have to go through and get certified through the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive folks in order to be a collector and to actually own automatic firing weapons. So if it's for your personal defense, low caliber weapon, minimum number of moving parts, which would be a revolver. If you're more comfortable with firearms and you know about them and you're willing to practice more, then you could probably go to a semi-automatic. The advantage there is that they carry more rounds. But again, firearm safety is paramount. Remember, I'm a life member of the National Rifle Association, longtime gun owner. I grew up around weapons, as a child and was taught to hunt and those sorts of things. But not only firearm safety, but their security. It's a tremendous amount of responsibility a citizen takes on when they purchase a firearm. Unfortunately, today, a lot of our car burglaries, we have a tremendous number of gun thefts, by the way, in Escambia County, and it's irresponsible gun owners, and that's what I call them, irresponsible gun owners. They'll see something on TV, a recent crime in Escambia County, and they're all, in a flutter about protecting themselves and their family or their business, so they rush out and purchase a handgun, load it up and stick it in the console or the glove compartment of their car, and they forget about it. They'll go home tonight, after having the gun for a couple of weeks or a month and the news worn off. They forget that the weapon is in their vehicle, sometimes stored loaded with ammunition, and tonight their car's broken into and that firearm is stolen. Well, now it's in the hands of a criminal, and that weapon could be used in the commission of another crime, felony, or, God forbid, the shooting of another innocent citizen or a law enforcement officer. So if you decide to make that step and purchase a firearm, again, revolver versus semi-automatic is two things you need to consider. That has to do with your experience and your background, how comfortable you are with weapons. Also, the care of a semi-automatic weapon is a little more difficult than it is for a revolver. You have to break it down, clean it, reassemble it, and then be very careful when reloading the weapon, of course, that you don't chamber around and end up firing a round off. But again, be a responsible gun owner and practice good gun safety measures. Go to certified courses.
And I was just wondering what a victim advocate does.
Emily asked the question, what does a victim advocate do? We have a victims advocate office here in the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, and they're called in to assist the victims of crimes. They do everything from assisting in the counseling of someone. If, let's say, there's a death, they're aggrieved. They also walk you through the legal process as to what avenues do you have as a victim of a crime to seek restitution from the individual that committed the crime or state, and also they're there again as just someone to lean on, to help you through a very difficult time. If it involves a loss of life, of course, there's a grieving process that goes on, and the victim's advocate is there to almost act like a guardian ad litem does for a child, meaning that we're going to be there. We know that at the moment that your anxiety level is so high that you're not thinking clearly, and so the victim advocate is there, just as their name implies. They're to advocate for you to make sure that everything is basically prearranged, and they step you through the legal process. Because the last thing you need to be dealing with if you're a victim of a crime is all the legalities that are thrown at you. What does that phrase mean? What, do I have to talk to law enforcement? Do I need a rights advisement? Do I need this? Victims advocates are there to step you through that process, get you the help that you need, and it's a service that's provided by the Escambia County Sheriff's Office.
My question is, what can the local citizen do in their area to reduce crime?
Samuel asked, what can the citizen do in our local area to reduce crime? Excellent question, Samuel. I've been asked that since the day I took office, and get asked that question with some regularity. We ask that you engage and be involved in your community. Form a neighborhood watch. Be willing to call, and again, you can do this anonymously. I tell people, I understand the realities of life, that you don't want to pick up the phone and turn in the local drug dealer who lives next door to you for fear of retribution. I mean, I'm a realist. I understand that. And most people are not in law enforcement, so that takes a tremendous amount of courage to do that. But I also remind people that you can do these things anonymously. Ask for no contact from law enforcement, and then again, you will never show up on a police report. No one will ever know that you made this tip anonymously. We work with the state attorney's office to ensure that our informants, confidential informants, are never outed, if you will. Why? Because again, as a citizen, you would never make a call and turn someone in for fear of retribution. So neighborhood watches are a good thing to do. But again, just talking to law enforcement, pick up the phone, ask to remain anonymous, but you would like to report a crime tip, etc. If you have information about a previous crime that's been committed, you can always call Crime Stoppers, and that's at 433-STOP. And by law, we can never divulge who you are. You're given a code or a number. It's much like what we used to refer to as a Swiss bank account. And if this leads to an arrest and the conviction of someone, you can be eligible for a cash reward. And you literally pull up to the bank and give them the number. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, let's say, and they will count out your cash. They're notified as to who that account is, or how much I should say that account will be paid. You're given your money and you pull off. The reason why I say I know that's true is because we have had some people that have made tips in the past that forgot their number. They cannot be given the number back, and nor can they ever get their money. So we tell folks, if you're given that code, that number, please protect it and understand that that only applies to you. And if you ever lose it, we can't search a database and pull your code up for you. And we've actually had people call and complain and say, I made a tip, it led to an arrest and a conviction, but they won't give me my money. Well, how come? Well, because you lost your code number. So, that's the responsible thing on your part. But engage with your community. Be a responsible citizen. Be a good parent to your children. If you see something, say something, report it, and be a good citizen. As I tell folks, that's what being an American is all about, is understanding that as a decent and orderly society, rules begin and end with us. And I preach that to our law enforcement officers every day. The standards and the laws apply to us doubly as they do to everyone else. Why? Because we're readily identifiable. We wear uniforms, have badges, and carry guns. If the law applies to me, it applies to everybody. You can also email your questions and ask the sheriff at escambiaso.com. We'll be back next week right here on Blab TV, Tuesday night at 8 p.m.